There is a brand new Wildcat head coach. I'd say brand new, more like brand old in a good way. Chris Klieman out, Collin Klein in. Here's what it means for the Big 12. This is a Locked On Big 12, Locked On Wildcats crossover.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to an emergency Locked On Big 12, Locked On Kansas State. That is Christian Rao. And I mean, out of nowhere, you wake up this morning and Chris Klieman is your head football coach, and now Collin Klein is your head football coach. Christian, this feels like I didn't even do the intro. Like I'm blown away with how quickly all of this occurred.
Yeah, this is wild. And you say wake up. I woke up with the potential of Collin Klein being my head coach over at Kansas State. Shout out to the Big 12 squad group checks. They let me know.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. But yeah, if you're on the West Coast, it's like 5:30 in the morning and you find out that, hello, Collin Klein's the coach.
It was wild. There was a little bit of smoke happening on social media last night, but I thought it was just the same old gripes about, we want to have Collin Klein. We want some change. This team was 6-6 this year. It was a disappointing year. Little did we know it was actual fire. There was spark there. And this is exciting stuff for Kansas State.
So let's start with Chris Klieman and then go into what it means to have Collin Klein back for the program, because he is the legend. Led Kansas State to being the number one team in the country and a great quarterback who becomes offensive coordinator, leaves for a better gig. Now he's the head coach who has developed into a great college football coach. But Klieman going out, this is a guy who won multiple national championships at the FCS level. And I think the sentiment I've seen on Twitter is perfectly summed up when folks say he was a great bridge between the legend Bill Snyder and whoever comes next.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we have finally found a spot where you can say you can have your cake and eat it too. You can be excited about the future for Kansas State, but also know that what you just had was great as well. Chris Klieman was an excellent coach. Right now, he's going to be seen as the second best coach in Kansas State history, not just because of wins, but because what he did to this program. He was the perfect fit to fit the shoes and filled the shoes of Bill Snyder after leaving. The culture, the buy-in, all that stuff was fantastic. And whether it's the fact that the new age of NIL and the transfer portal changed the way that you think about this, legendary coaches like Chris Klieman, like these older coaches, we've seen it happen with Nick Saban. We've seen it happen in the basketball era as well. Syracuse's head coach comes to mind. They get kind of sick and tired of this new world of how to coach these players. And I think it was just a perfect scenario for Chris Klieman to move on. I think you were most likely going to see a lot of roster turnover anyways. That might be different now because you're bringing in Optimus Klein. He's coming back.
Yeah. That is, again, I think the focal point of what we'll get to when it comes to talking Collin Klein in this is how he retains the roster, especially with the name and how excited the fan base is for Klieman. Is he done? Is he done overall, or is this a quasi-retirement? It wasn't working out. It was too stressful, and he comes back in a year or two.
No, I think he's done. He put out a statement about him officially retiring, and he said he plans to retire from coaching. And he said it's something to do with the culmination between his own personal health and the fact that he wants to spend more time with his wife and his kids. He said he believes now is the right time to step away. Very thankful for, the athletic director, spoke all that stuff like that. But I believe he is done with coaching college football. And what a perfect time to leave. I mean, I think in the roster wise, it's a good time. Obviously, you want to leave on top. 2022 winning the Big 12 championship is probably on top in the eyes of Chris Klieman. But the fact that he got to that Big 12 championship in 2022, nobody thought that would happen. There was a lot of disparity with that hire, with the Gene Taylor, with the Chris Klieman hire. A lot of people did not want that to happen, and he proved everybody wrong by getting that win against TCU, who reminded was in the national championship that year, but they did not win the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I think it's clear that replacing the legend is one of the hardest things to do in sports as a coach, and it's clear that Chris Klieman did a very good job. He was exactly what Kansas State needed in this. The fan base this year, I don't want to say they treated him unfairly. Look, there were some serious expectations that were missed. It was if I told you preseason K-State would go 6-6, the word disaster would come to mind for a team that has the roster that should win a Big 12 championship. And honestly, Christian, I think this is probably best for both parties after hearing week in and week out the press conferences of Chris Klieman that just sounded more and more dejected, sounded like someone that probably has given all he has to the game.
Yeah, he felt exhausted. Some of these press conferences, you could tell that he was just ready to give up. And there was some reports about him, quote unquote, cashing it in. And then, of course, the players packing it in. And that really changed. The narrative changed after the Utah game because of how well they played against Utah. And then, of course, finishing the season strong with a win against Colorado. But you could tell that Chris Klieman was exhausted. And remember last year, they started the season 7-1. They started strong until the wheels fell off against Houston. And there was some rumors swirling around about him personally not dealing with some sort of personal matter. And so since then, there really hasn't been the same from Chris Klieman. Of course, the Dublin start is not great, starting 0, falling off really fast, losing that game, losing to Army doesn't help you at all either. But overall, I think that you have to look at this as a whole. 6-6, you still make it to a bowl game with the exception of the COVID year, which no one counts anyways. This is the worst year that Chris Klieman had at Kansas State, and you're still going to a bowl game. Every single year that you could go to a bowl game, you went to a bowl game under Chris Klieman. You won the Big 12 championship in 2022. You raised the stakes, something that was very hard to do after Bill Snyder. Of course, the Ron Prince thing is a whole different kind of scenario. We don't have to go into that.
True.
Direction.
Yes.
But Chris Klieman kept the standards at the very same level of Bill Snyder. If anything, he might have actually raised it a little bit with this new era of NIL and transfer portal and how to actually keep Kansas State relevant. Now, I think the way that he's going to pass the torch, there's no coaching search, there's no drama, there's nothing like that. The way that they're passing the torch to Collin Klein just shows that they're ready to make that next step forward. And that should be exciting if you're Kansas State.
Coming up, Collin Klein's the new head coach. That's great, man. Locked on Big 12, locked on Kansas State. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go every weekend with the NFL on to make the game matter a little bit more for me. Look, I'm not the biggest NFL guy, but when I can sprinkle some money on the Chiefs or on the Cowboys or on the 49ers and I win money, of course I'm watching that game. FanDuel makes it exciting. Place bets as the action unfolds, live betting as well, live spreads, money lines adjust instantly, player props, and they update as the guys heat up. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com. Place the NFL live bets all season long that you can place right now at FanDuel. FanDuel, the game moves fast, so can you. FanDuel.com is exactly where to go. Download the FanDuel app today. Collin Klein is the new head coach of the Kansas State Wildcats. How exciting is that sentence?
Very exciting. It's been something that's been swirling in the comments of Locked On Kansas State for months now. I mean, ever since the loss to Iowa State, it's swirling around how they want to have this fresh blood and really even consider it fresh blood, but bring it back to Kansas State of Collin Klein. No one wanted him to leave in the first place when he took off and to become the offensive coordinator for Texas A&M. And I think what he's done so far over at Texas A&M, I mean, we're talking about an offensive coordinator who's going to be participating in the college football playoffs and then is going to become the head coach of Kansas State. Obviously, what he's done with this program, the legacy he has, a Heisman runner-up, what his quarterback legacy was. And might I remind you, he was the offensive coordinator when Avery Johnson was recruited.
Yeah, that's going to be a big piece of this, whether or not Avery Johnson is a Wildcat next season. And every man is a Wildcat. So we'll see if that is true, not just in theory for Avery Johnson as a member of the program, or he pulls up Will Howard and wins a national championship somewhere else. That remains to be seen. I think that maybe step one for Collin Klein is recruiting his roster. Is that going to be the focus of this entire week?
I think it has to be. And I don't know if you say just for this week, because I think it's going to be a little bit stretched out. I think you have the rest of this month to worry about it. You have to wait until January, that transfer portal window to really open up. I think you have some time. The fact that you did not have to worry about a coaching search, you said this is happening, Chris Klieman's retiring, we are immediately pivoting to Collin Klein. We know our guy. I think that helps one with National Early Signing Day. So far, we're talking today on National Early Signing Day, day one, and no one has flipped in the wrong direction. We're actually getting players from Iowa State to Kansas State coming in with the fact knowing that there's already this retirement happening. But then, of course, you talk about the main players. And the main players I'm thinking about right off the bat is Avery Johnson, Jace Brown, and Lincoln Cure. Those three offensive guys are the three that really matter more than anything else when you're trying to work on retention. Last year, retention was the huge model, the huge push. As we talked about earlier, you started the season 7-1, the wheels fell off. In the offseason, you could push that narrative saying, hey, we started great. This team has what it takes to be a Big 12 contender, and they really pushed that retention. It helped them bring Avery back instead of leaving to go to Tennessee after the whole Nico drama. We know that was a possibility. It kept Jace Brown from not leaving, and it kept Dylan Edwards from not leaving as well, who is no longer with the program. But that was important for the retention model. I didn't think there was any momentum whatsoever about being able to sell that retention model for Kansas State under Chris Klieman. Now that you bring in Collin Klein, now you bring in an offensive, dare I say, mastermind. When he was the offensive coordinator for Kansas State in 22 and 23, they were both in the top 25 in the country in offensive ranks. So the fact that you bring that in now, and that's the same guy that helped recruit your dual threat quarterback, somebody who can be seen as one of the best quarterbacks in Kansas State history if he has the right weapons, I think you can push that narrative yet again, saying, hey, look at the momentum, look at the spark that Kansas State's building right now. Come stay so we can build this program up and be a Big 12 contender yet again.
This is a tough question because I almost don't want to ask it. It feels so obvious to answer, and there are so many ways you could answer it, but it should be posed at the same time. Collin Klein has not been a head coach in college football. This is his first go-around, and he's not been a coach in college football for a very long time. He's a quarterback. He's got that mind. I get it. But what can we point to say he is ready to be not just the OC and call the plays, but the guy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the way you point at it is the type of relationships that he's built in Kansas State. That's the thing I think he has to lean on very heavy. And then what he's built over the last couple seasons in the SEC. There's a lot of coaches that have been fired over the last couple of weeks in the entire country, a lot in the SEC as well. There's some that have some Kansas State connections. Maybe you dip into that on your defensive side. Maybe you dip into that on the offensive side when you're adding your assistant coaches. You focus on recruiting. You take the right step forward in this new era. Yeah.
Hey, Coach P, I'm just double checking again. You don't want to be the DC, right? You're good?
Yeah. How you doing? Kansas State, former Kansas State player.
Coach Patterson says we'll talk later. That's it. That's he's playing the fifth. That's the only quote we can get. So yes,
okay.
you have, right. He mentioned there are some guys with Kansas connections that could possibly fill the staff. I don't know.
Kansas State connections. Say it right.
Well, the Sunflower State, that's what I meant. Not Kansas connections, but the state of Kansas connections. All right, well, you can scratch one probably off the board. But yes, there are a lot of names with connections to the state that could step in and coach.
Yes, 100%. And you talk about the SEC, there's rumors that potentially a guy like maybe Stoops, who was just fired from Kentucky, could come and help you on your defensive staff. Obviously, they're all rumors right now. We are still waiting on what is the next step for Kansas State, but it's an exciting moment. And I think that now you don't have to go and worry about have a coaching search. You have to nail the assistants right. You have to nail the NIL general manager right. You have to nail your recruiting staff, all that support staff. You have to do it right the first time, especially since as of right now, from the rumors we're hearing, Gene Taylor is staying the athletic director. You got to make sure you do this right, and you don't have years to build it. You have to do it right away.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think Collin Klein is young enough, has enough energy to do this, and that's going to be a key in today's college football. Coaches are getting old. If you are a coach who feels like you're getting old, Chris Klieman probably felt like he was getting old. There's no way to stay afloat when there are so many more responsibilities as a head coach past watching film and being a football coach. You have to be an agent and a CEO and a GM and all these things, and Collin Klein, I think, can be that. Is this the best case scenario as far as hires go for Kansas? I mean, like barring a Nick Saban, is this the best case scenario for K-State?
I truly think yes. Yeah, I truly think this is the best hire, and I think that's why this happened so fast. That's why they didn't hire an agency to make a coaching search. They knew exactly who they were going to get, and that was the answer, plain and simple, is if Chris Klieman leaves, then we're going to have a smooth transition where we go from Klieman to Klein. That's it. And we've seen that happen with Snyder, that you wanted to find the right person to be able to fill the shoes. That's why Snyder had to come back the second time, because it didn't work the first time. And then Klieman comes in, fills that spot very nicely from Gene Taylor, who was with him at his old spot. This is a new hire for Gene Taylor. This is something that obviously is not him coming from his old stomping grounds of North Dakota. This is something that you have the opportunity to really build your legacy. You've already won a Big 12 championship with Chris Klieman. Gene Taylor, I thought, was going to be leaving the same time Chris Klieman had left as well. Now you're sticking around with Collin Klein. You can build your legacy even more with a Kansas State legend already in the fold.
Christian, how important is NIL going to be for Collin Klein, and can he raise the resources to compete with BYU and Texas Tech?
He's going to have to find and get the donors out of the woodwork. He has to push NIL way forward. Look what Kansas is doing. Just focus on the in-state itself. Kansas brought $300 million in this year for the new stadium, for recruiting, and they're still a 5-7 football team. The fact that they are going to do everything they can to get their step away forward, and then now they can recruit and say, well, they don't have a Big 12 championship coach anymore. They have a first-year coach, and they're going to find a way to really work those in-state recruits. And winning in the state of Kansas is step one. And then you can focus down the pipeline into Oklahoma's Texas, where Kansas State is really trying to build their relationships, and bringing an offensive coordinator in from also Texas A&M doesn't hurt that whatsoever. He has to find a way to get those donors to step up. Maybe that was one of the reasons why he is the coach right now, and there was no coaching search to begin with. But yeah, NIL is super important, Drake.
Yeah, I think that's day one. Step one is he's got to go to the donors. He's got to raise that money to compete with not just the higher ups in college football, the haves in college football, like in Ohio State and LSU, but they're in the house with you now. I mean, Texas Tech and BYU are leading the way at NIL in the Big 12. And if you can't compete with them money-wise, you're not going to be able to win football games in Arlington. And so Kansas State, Collin Klein will obviously have to do that. Before we wrap this up, and I know it's kind of a quick hitter, but I want to get your thoughts. And I know Kansas State fans are over the moon. They're excited. What does Collin Klein need to do to win the press conference?
Ooh, that's interesting. I would say when that press conference happens, I think the way that he has to point it and say he's going to continue the path of success, because after last year, other than last year, I should say, this past season, the 6-6 year, Kansas State has shown success through and through. They've been seen as a Big 12 contender ever since really week 0 this year. They've been seen as a Big 12 contender under Chris Klieman. He has to say not only is he going to continue the success, but he's going to bring it back to the championship ways. 2022 and beyond, when he was an offensive coordinator on the staff, he has to get, the donors excited. He has to talk about how they're going to win in-state recruiting, how they're going to work on a national level, and the fact that they are not going to leave any stone unturned. They're going to focus on in-state recruiting, focus on high school recruiting, and really push the transfer portal to make sure this team is a Big 12 contender in 2026.
No doubt. Christian, I think this is an A+ hire. I think this came at the right time for Kansas State, the right time for Chris Klieman, the right time for Gene Taylor. The entire athletic department, I think, is going to win with this move, and I'm excited to see him on the sideline with Eric Morris at Oklahoma State. I'm excited about the new coaches that the Big 12 has landed here, and Kalani Sitake, who left for Penn State, now he's the new coach at BYU. There have been some crazy things that have come down the pipeline in the last couple of weeks, specifically these last 72 hours or so. Where can folks find more of your work as you continue to talk about Collin Klein, this recruiting class, all of it?
Yeah, we're bringing you Wildcat coverage like no one else every single day on Locked On Kansas State, anywhere you listen on YouTube or audio. We got early signing day to talk about, and then, of course, what's going on with Collin Klein and his new staff. We are going to be loaded over on Locked On Kansas State.
No doubt. That is Christian Rao. This has been, and always will be, Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Crossover. Kansas State and Dose Grande.